The Godfather Part 3 retreads familiar territory in its portrayal of the Corleone crime family, and its focus on the question of who will become the next Don Corleone. However, the movie breaks new ground by bringing the papacy and the Vatican, the ruling administrators of the Catholic Church, directly into the story of the Godfather trilogy. What's more, the Godfather 3's Pope and Vatican banking scandal aren't entirely fictitious, but are based on true stories from the 12 years preceding the movie's release. It's important to stress that almost all the Godfather trilogy's characters are fictional, and its writers, Francis Ford Coppola and Mario Puzo, employ dramatic license with abandon even when depicting true events. Nevertheless, it's interesting to examine the role that the Pope and the Vatican play in The Godfather Part 3, particularly concerning the real stories that rocked the Catholic Church between 1978 and 1984. Michael Corleone has dealings with the future Pope and the Vatican Bank in The Godfather Part 3. The Corleone family bails out the Vatican Bank while Michael confesses his sins to Cardinal Lamberto. In one of The Godfather Part 3's most iconic moments, during a visit to Italy, Michael Corleone confesses his sins to Cardinal Lamberto, a major figure in the Catholic Church who's in line to become the next pope. Later in the movie, Lamberto becomes Pope John Paul I following the death of his predecessor, before being fatally poisoned by Archbishop Gildery, the head of the Vatican Bank. The Corleone family also has direct dealings with the bank, as Michael offers to bail it out to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars by buying out the Vatican's shares in the multinational real estate company International Immobilia. As it turns out, the company's chairman, Licio Lucchesi, is a Sicilian mobster, and he, Gildery, and Vatican bank accountant Frederick Kienchig are set to make a personal profit by embezzling the money from the transaction between the Vatican Bank and the Corleone family. The Godfather Part 3's Pope conspiracy and Vatican banking scandal are based on true stories. What happened to the real Pope John Paul I and Banco Ambrosiano? Cardinal Lamberto is based on the real-life Albino Lucioni, who became Pope John Paul I, the most recent Italian pope, upon succeeding Pope Paul VI in 1978. The Godfather Part 3 is set in the same year, and sticks closely to the real timeline of events surrounding John Paul I's papacy, including the fact that he died just over a month after assuming the office of pope. His death so soon after becoming pope was a highly surprising occurrence. In 1982, Banco Ambrosiano folded due to colossal debts, in a similar scenario to the Vatican Bank needing to have its insurmountable debts bailed out via a massive sale of its assets to Michael Corleone in The Godfather Part 3. At the time, rumors swirled about money laundering and mob involvement in Banco Ambrosiano, which are mirrored in Frederick Kienchig, Archbishop Gildery, and Licio Lucchesi's collusion to misappropriate funds from the International Immobilia sale in the third Godfather movie. Was Pope John Paul I really poisoned? The conspiracy theories around his death have never been proven. Pope John Paul I. Although the death of the real Pope John Paul I just a month into his papacy in 1978 was certainly shocking, there's never been any suggestion from an officially recognized source that he was poisoned, as The Godfather Part 3 depicts. Albino Lucioni died of a heart attack on September 28, 1978, and his death was never treated as suspicious by the authorities, despite its proximity to him being chosen as the new pope. Author David Yallop published a best-selling book in 1984 entitled In God's Name, an investigation into the murder of Pope John Paul I, in which he asserted that John Paul I was indeed poisoned. Yallop claims that the poisoning was carried out by a Masonic society on the orders of Roberto Calvi, a figure akin to both Archbishop Gildery and Frederick Kienchig in The Godfather 3, who managed Banco Ambrosiano. The book's hypothesis is generally characterized by historians, criminal experts, and critics in the media as a conspiracy theory of dubious origins. Calvi was murdered following the Pope's death in a hanging staged to look like a suicide. This is similar to what happened to Kienchig in The Godfather Part 3, the scandalous conduct of Vatican Bank managers Archbishop Gildery and Frederick Kienchig in The Godfather Part 3, which includes embezzlement and money laundering on a huge scale, is not dissimilar to the conduct of those who were the heads of Banco Ambrosiano before it folded. The real bank collapsed in part because of massive embezzlement, with Roberto Calvi likely one of the main offenders in this regard. Its dissolution led to accusations during later criminal trials that it was used to launder money. There were suspicions about Banco Ambrosiano supposedly acting as a conduit for the transfer of United States funds to an anti-Soviet resistance movement in Poland and a far-right militia in Nicaragua, via The Guardian. This element of the real Vatican banking scandal doesn't feature in the third Godfather film, perhaps because it was little more than a speculative rumor at the time the movie's script was written. Further investigations into the death of Roberto Calvi have substantiated these rumors, however, lending new meaning and significance to the story Francis Ford Coppola and Mario Puzo told in 1990's The Godfather Part 3.